Good afternoon. Are we all hydrated, caffeinated? My name is Elizabeth Stewart. I am a child of the living God, a wife of Michael Stewart, who's sitting right over here. I am the mother of two sons, William and John, and this is funny because I grew up with four younger brothers, and somehow I have managed to copy and paste my life to living with all men once again. So William is 14 years old and John is 11 years old. I have served as a worship director of my church for the past decade. We're right outside of the Charlotte, North Carolina area, and it's called Grace Life Church. And I have to tell you that it is truly God's grace in my life that I'm speaking to you today, because two of the three pastors who rescued a very broken teenager are in this room today. One is with Christ, Knapp Clark and his wife Dixie, Kenny Hodges and his wife Kay, and Butch Simmons and his wife Susan. And it is on the couches in their homes where I discovered the free grace gospel of Jesus Christ. And I am convinced that without their influence, I wouldn't have had the trajectory that I've had. So although I cannot thank you enough in this life, I do recognize that there is a God who weighs and measures, and that great your reward will be, both for helping me and for the thousands I am sure you have helped thereafter. I've titled this, Rooted in Worship, the Impact of the Invisible Life, and I want to start by sharing a quote with you. A real Christian is an odd number anyway. He feels supreme love from one who he's never seen. He talks familiarly every day to someone he cannot see. He expects to go to heaven on the virtue of another. Empties himself in order to be full. Admits he's wrong so he can be declared right. Goes down in order to get up. Is strongest when he's weakest. Richest when he's poorest, and happiest when he feels the worst. He dies so that he can live. He forsakes in order to have. Gives away so that he can keep. He sees the invisible, hears the inaudible, and knows that which passeth knowledge. He sees the invisible, hears the inaudible, and knows that which passeth knowledge. I want to tell you a story about the day that I discovered that worship is rooted in the invisible. I was very young. It's 20 years ago now. And I'd moved to New York to study classical piano. And to keep up with the cost of living there, I did two things. I taught music at a high-dollar music school in Westchester, New York, and on the side, I nannied for children. One bitterly cold evening in December, I received a call from my favorite of all the families that I worked for, the Grisantis. Mrs. Grisanti was an attorney, and Mr. Grisanti was a stockbroker on Wall Street. They had four stair-step little girls then, ages 8, 6, 4, and 2, and they were, rare for New York City, a family of believers. Intelligent, vibrant, gracious, and as a joke, they used to say that paying me was their contribution to the arts. When I got Mrs. Grisanti's call asking if I could care for a large number of children at a benefit concert she was hosting, I was thrilled because I knew what this meant. A beautiful dinner in their home and a Christmas paycheck and a warm family environment, which I was missing terribly. It was a normal night. I took the subway to their beautiful apartment on the Upper East Side. I remember trudging through the snow in my Christmas dress and boots and winter coat with the silvery moon above the New York City skyscrapers. I could see my breath in the cold. When I walked into their apartment, it was warm and smelled like cinnamon. Men were in their finest suits, and women in jewel-toned dresses gathered round, bellowing carols, glasses full of cheer, while Mr. Grisanti played carols on his Steinway piano. But I discovered this was not just any benefit dinner. It was crowded with New York's elite, but there was something significantly different. Quickly, I was whisked to the children's play area where I saw that there were many, 7 to be exact, terribly disfigured children. What was happening? What was this? Why had no one told me? Some were limbless. Others had fingers that had morphed into a single digit. The Grisanti children, along with all the other tiny guests clad in their Christmas outfits, were cheerfully dashing around the room, dolls in hand, swords and shields raised. I was then informed that the Grisantis held this same event every single year for this one particular family. You see, These adopted children had been victims of Chernobyl. And this particular mother and father had made this choice, actually 7 choices, to adopt, feed, clothe, and forever brush the teeth of all 7 of these children in order to mirror the love, dignity, and value that God gives to them in this broken world. I was so shocked by all of this, and perhaps it would have shocked most of us. I was overwhelmed by this mother and father's Herculean spirit. I was crushed by these children's severe disabilities. The truth is, they're actually very hard to look at. And then I felt guilty that they were terribly hard to look at, and I felt guilty for my own health and ease. I looked around to see one child moving pieces to the game Trouble. Just one tiny green plastic piece, while other children rapid fire zip their little blue, red, and yellow pieces around the board, pop, pop, popping the center of the bubble as if it was as simple as breathing in and out. The child moving the green piece kept a giant smile. He moved his piece at his pace, and he kept on. And then, in one of the most time-dilating moments of my life, one of the Chernobyl children looked up at me from a toy piano, smiled, and asked if I would sit with him and play with him. Not play the piano for him, but with him. He didn't even have all his fingers. I still don't know why he did it. He didn't know me, I didn't know him, and no one had told him that piano was my thing. But I did sit, and I watched him, without all of his fingers, playing with complete joy, one note at a time. And while I watched him, I caught my breath. The Steinway in the other room and all the caroling voices died away. Everything blurred into the background. I only saw him and held this single thought: this is not less. Chopin and Mozart couldn't have moved me more. No stage performance could have yielded this. His one note at a time was everything. It meant everything. We know it. Something inside us knows, something in us tells us that his effort is valuable, eternal even. There's something deeper than what we see. As I've gotten older, I think I've recalled the story 1,000 times. What makes him so breathtaking? This story took place 20 years ago. Why am I still emotional over it? It isn't what he played, which any person could have recreated, skills or no skills. Part of what left me in awe was his complete and utter freedom from comparison. His ability to enjoy the task before him with the abilities that he had. It is my opinion, and do what you will with it, that we most often stop seeing the invisible because of a single platform which Satan employs ad infinitum in each of our lives. Reality is that Satan has been robbing people's worship through comparison since the garden. Satan is the comparison thief. In Genesis 3, we see Satan saying, take this, try it this way, you won't die. Think about what Satan does there. You'll be like God. He tempted Eve to conform to his image, almost perfect. But he tempts her with a twisted platform. Let me give you a definition for worship that I really love. Maybe. Worship is the submission of all of our nature to God. It's the quickening of the conscience by his holiness. It's the nourishment of mind with his truth. It's the purifying of imagination by his beauty, the opening of the heart to his love, the surrender of will to his purpose. All of this gathered up in adoration, the most selfless emotion of which our nature is capable. The most selfless emotion which our nature is capable. Beautiful. One author has distilled it into this: sense and service. He says that sensing God, or serving God without sensing him, is a drudgery. I'll say that again. Serving God without sensing him is a drudgery, but sensing God without serving him, it's a mockery. Satan is the comparisons thief, and it shows up in every element of the first playbook, the 10 Commandments. You should have no other gods before me and not make for yourself false gods. Instead of what you have, you could have more control if. You shall not take the name of God in vain, but I would sound cooler and slicker and more relevant if. Honor your father and mother. Well, I have more important things to do with my life, so you shall not murder. And since my life is more important than yours, I can. You shall not commit adultery, but my life would be more exciting if I had. You shall not steal. Well, my life would be better if I had. You shall not bear false witness. I deserve to have the upper hand, and so. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. My life would be more impressive if. I've wondered a lot of my life why it is that God ends these commandments to Moses with the neighbor's house. Seems like there's these heavy hitter sins. And then we have this last one about the neighbor's house. I think it's because Jesus will echo them again in what I've called the great distillation. You shall love the Lord your God with your heart, with your soul, with your mind, with your strength. And the second's like it, love your neighbor as yourself. There is no greater commandment than this. I think Satan has done an extraordinary job trying to convince people that you have something better to do. You have a higher goal than loving your neighbor. Most of us in daily life don't have to reach terribly deeply to come up with our pet comparisons because we're up to our armpits in them. We compare where we live, the size of our house. We compare neighborhoods, how athletic we are. How athletic we are, decidedly not. How much we weigh, how tall we are, where we went to school, how many degrees we have. And then it's, where did we get those degrees from? What your job title is. You compare talent, we compare intellect, we compare money, we compare how much we eat, we compare how much we sleep. And if you have children, the list is so comprehensive. And you heard this from Dr. Hodges earlier. How much they cry, how fast they walk, how fast they develop verbally, how fast they potty train, how quickly they learn their letters and colors, how quickly they read, how well they behave at play dates, how well they share with their siblings. And although it is not a season I have been through yet, I'm told that with adult children, the comparisons are many. When we're not out in the wild, but on our phones, which have become a bit of a home, by the way. My husband read a study recently that the cell phone has become the home we go to. So when we're in line, instead of visiting with the person here or here, we become uncomfortable. So like a snail with a house on its back, we go home. The phone is home. And while we're there comparing who we are versus who someone else is in filtered, mindless social media, we look at friends and we see how young they look or how healthy they look, the health struggles they don't have. Why is their family so together? Why do they have children? How can they have those children? Why do they have so many children? Why is her husband so easy to be married to? And why is his wife so together? We are robbing ourselves of worship because we're not sensing and serving God in those moments. We are sensing our inferiority and serving our complexes. And so we turn inward again, again, again. Comparison is the enemy of contentment. I didn't come up with that. A very, very smart man named Ken Boa says that comparison is the enemy of contentment. These are my kids. That's William on your left and John on your right. That was them now, but it wasn't so long ago that they were this. This is William. He turned 14 last month. That's John, touchdown. That's also William. This is my oldest learning to talk. This is not gratuitous, I promise.
What does a cat say? Meow. What does a sheep say? Sheep? What does a horse say? What does an elephant say? What does an owl say? An owl. What does a monkey say? Very good. Give me 5.
One more. There's a purpose, I promise. Stick with me. This is my oldest learning to walk on what I think is the longest phone cord in America. It just keeps going. You know how excited we were about these little steps? Let me tell you what we would never say watching this. Because if it's yours or a child in your life, it's everything. We would never say, stupid baby. Never. But with our own development, we completely lose our way because we're looking and looking and looking again. And so quickly, it goes from that to this. It's my kids at the Met. It becomes this. Becomes this.
Here you go!
Come on, yeah! Run!
Run!
If you keep looking around, you'll lose your joy. You'll lose your worship. The same author, Ken Boa, told me this when I was in his living room one day. He said, "You're God's refrigerator art." I said, "What does that mean?" He said, if your child brings you a piece of art and you put it on the refrigerator, you're not putting it up there because it's going to be a piece at the Met. You're putting it up there because they did it. And they did it for you. I think reality is this. God is very easy to please, but he's impossible to impress. God is very easy to please, but he's impossible to impress. This is from Screw Tape Letters. I think Lewis liked writing this book the least, but it's my favorite. If you haven't read it, there's a senior demon who's the uncle, and he's writing letters to a junior demon, his nephew, Screw Tape. We want a whole race perpetually in pursuit of the rainbow's end. Never honest, not kind, nor happy. That's important. Nor kind nor happy now, but always using a mere fuel wherewith to heap the altar of the future, every real gift which is offered them in the present. Never happy now. I want to walk you through this beautiful presentation. My husband, Ken, actually put this bit together, but I didn't want you to go without seeing it. Who determines the content of your life? Yourself or Christ? Heads up, self is the default. We have to renew over and over and over for that to not be the case. Comparison gives birth to covetousness, which will give birth to competition, which will yield compromise. I've learned to be content in whatever circumstances I am. I know how to get along with humble means. I know how to live in prosperity. In any and every circumstance, I've learned the secret of being filled and going hungry, both of having abundance and suffering need. This from Job. Naked I came from my mother's womb, naked I shall return there. The Lord gave and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Through Christ, our contentment yields competency. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I love this verse. His divine power has granted to us everything pertaining to life and godliness through the true knowledge of him who called us by his own glory and excellence. Not that we're adequate in ourselves to consider anything as coming from ourselves, but our adequacy is from God. Contentment yields competency, yields compassion, yields character. These things are at odds with one another. Comparison is the enemy of contentment. Covetousness is the enemy of competency. Competition is the enemy of compassion. Compromise is the enemy of character. That's life, isn't it? Every once in a while, we get a minute where there's chronological time, but there's also these kairos moments where things stop going tick, 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 but we get a little bit of bend, a little time dilation. The secret of contentment, we will be less impressed by numbers, less driven to impress, less hurried, and more alive to the grace of the present moment. One of my favorite speakers, Dr. Richard Howe, gives this example, because I don't know what the opposite of athlete is, but it's Elizabeth. That's the picture in the dictionary. So he gives this analogy of, let's say that I was in a jumping competition with Michael Jordan, which would be hysterical, but I would be sweaty and nervous and terrified, and I would clear 2 inches, and it would look ridiculous, but Michael Jordan would probably look pretty cool, right? He would clear quite a bit of air. And I would feel completely ashamed. And this is sometimes where we stop in life. But then if you find out that the objective isn't to beat Michael Jordan, but in fact, to jump to the moon, this is who we are with Christ. When we prioritize the inner life, intimacy with Christ, then we have flourishing activity. The roots are the intimacy. We cannot have flourishing activity without it. When we prioritize solitude, we have flourishing engagement. When we prioritize the interior, we have flourishing exterior. When we prioritize the seeking of our calling, we have a flourishing character. We don't get to skip this one. When we prioritize rest, we have flourishing work. My view is it's what you do with where you come from. And I think that we see that both in the widow's mite and in the parable of the talents. Turn in your Bibles, if you would, to Matthew 6. Michael, would you pass me my Bible? Thank you. What a man. Matthew 6, take heed that you do not do your charitable deeds before men to be seen by them. Otherwise you have what? No reward from your Father who is in heaven. Therefore, when you do a charitable deed, do not sound a trumpet. He talks to the musicians first. Who'd have thought? Do not sound a trumpet before you as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, that they may have glory from men. Assuredly, I say to you, they have their reward. But when you do a charitable deed, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your deed will be in secret. That's when you give. Let's take a look at verse 5. When you pray, and when you pray, do not be like the hypocrites, for they love to pray standing in the synagogues and on the street corners so that they can be seen by men. Surely I say to you, they have their reward. But you, when you pray, go into your room, shut your door, and pray to your Father who is in secret. And your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. When you give, when you pray, jump down to verse 16. Here's when you fast. Moreover, when you fast, do not be like the hypocrites with a sad countenance, for they disfigure their face so that they may be seen by men when they are fasting. Surely I say to you, they have their reward in full. But you, when you fast, anoint your head, wash your face, so that you do not appear to men to be fasting, but to your Father who is in the secret place. I love this visual of the roots here. He's in the roots. And your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you openly when you give, when you fast, when you pray in secret. I'm going to peel back a little bit of dirt and show you some of the things that have been valuable to me in my root life. You'll see 2 clips. The first clip is of a little boy whose body was completely broken. He's with Jesus as of last year. He's racked with cerebral palsy and enslaved to a wheelchair. He could not speak. He has very little operation of his hands. However, while he lived, his heart was full. He loved music, and his mother brought him to the church so I could play for him one Sunday afternoon. This video is so short, and I'm sad that it's so short, and I'm sad that I didn't keep my phone on for longer. It's just nanoseconds. However, what I want you to see, and you'll need to watch very alert, what I want you to see is this child's moment of awake. And to recognize that it's not less than any accomplishment of anyone in this room. It's what he did with where he came from. And two, if I understand the metrics of the kingdom correctly, our time with people like these is where pure rooted worship lies. The second clip is the last thing that I'll show you, is a clip that I'll participate in. It's a recitation of Isaiah 40, which I've spent some time memorizing in my invisible hours. I am sharing it with you because I don't know of a greater comfort to life suffering than this. And I also don't know of a greater answer to our battle with a comparison thief than that of Scripture. It's Scripture that renews the heart, soul, and mind, and through it, we root our hearts and minds in Him.